Okay, we're a few minutes past the hour, so I'll get started. I know we have several more registrants, so hopefully more people will join us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for the second in our Lunch and Learn series this February. I'm April Harrington, the project manager of the Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative. And I am honored to have our team from UChicago Medicine here today to present. We have Ashley Casiello, Senior Consultant of Workforce Development. She also sits on our steering committee at CHWC, and Audrey Gamet, the Senior Consultant in Leadership Recruitment Strategy at UChicago. And they'll be talking about inclusive hiring strategies at UChicago Medicine and associated lessons learned. In just a moment, I will pass it over to them. But just in case you are unfamiliar with the Chicagoland Healthcare Workforce Collaborative, we are an employer-led sector partnership with 13 of the major health and hospital systems in Chicagoland at our table. We are also supported by a community of strategic partners, including training providers, community organizations, funders, and workforce development organizations. And together, we are here to support an inclusive healthcare workforce while also meeting the ever-growing labor demands in healthcare in Chicago. We do that by focusing on local and targeted hiring, by creating stronger partnerships with our education and training providers, and by strengthening retention and career pathways so that we're not just bringing people into frontline positions, but that we're guiding them through progressive career ladders to quality family-sustaining careers. This is the second in our Lunch and Learn series, and we have one more, sort of a late lunch, if you will, next week on February 21st from 2 to 3. Then we'll be hearing from Michelle Smith and Bridget Bean of Advocate Aurora Health. They'll be discussing their new team member coaching program, which has been in existence for, I want to say at least the past 6 months right now. It's an innovative program, so I encourage you all to come back and join us to learn about that. Then on February 22nd, also next week, CHWC is teaming up with the Healthcare Council of Chicago for a conversation around education and training in healthcare. It's called Creating Pathways for the Next Generation of Healthcare Leaders. Rukia Kirby-Johnson, who was on our last week's call from Rush, will actually be participating in that panel. So I encourage you to come to that as well. And then finally, we have our first quarterly meeting coming up on March 14th in the morning. All of these are via Zoom. There will be a lot of updates on CHWC and what we're focusing on this year, as well as updates on our recent grant award, the Good Jobs Challenge, which we'll be using to fund training programs out of CHWC. So I'm going to put links to all of these registrations in the chat in just a moment. And then one final thing, we have our Youth Pathways Committee at CHWC is hosting an information session for high school students next week on February 21st, 5 to 6 p.m. It's virtual. It's about summer internship programs, but also about some year-long programs for mentorship or training. We already have about 130 students signed up, which is great. So I am going to include the flyer for this just in our follow-up email from this session, which I will send tomorrow. I'll include the recording and the slides and links to all these events, as well as a flyer for this. If by any chance you have a program that you would like to include in that event, I am still open to including more, so let me know right away. And also, if you are in contact with any high school students, if you could please help promote this through your pathways, that'd be great. And with that, I will hand it over to Audrey and Ashley to get us started. Thank you so much.
Thanks, April. Let me just get started with sharing my screen. And can you all see the UCM presentation? Awesome. Thank you.
Yep, we're good.
Perfect. Okay. So to get started, if you don't know me, my name is Ashley Casiello. I work for UCM as the Senior Consultant for Workforce Development, which means that I oversee strategies to help hire from our local community, as well as how to upskill and promote our frontline in order to fill hard-to-fill positions throughout the organization. I'll hand it over to Audrey to introduce herself.
Thanks, Ashley. I am Audrey Gamet, as Ashley said, and April.
I am the Senior Consultant for Leadership Recruitment Strategy at UChicago Medicine. So I'm Ashley's counterpart, focusing on bringing in leadership talent, and then also looking at internal mobility into leadership positions across the medical center. So as you saw on our title page, today we're going to talk about inclusive hiring. So we thought we'd start with a little overview of what exactly that means. As you can surmise, inclusive hiring is the process of connecting with, interviewing, hiring, and retaining a diverse set of individuals. So that the purpose there is really to increase employment access to marginalized and underutilized talent pools. And the way that we focus on that is through sourcing. And so that means engaging a diverse pool of candidates. And we do that in a number of ways, some of which Ashley will talk about. In our hiring practices, making sure that they are inclusive and equitable. In retention support, again, making sure that that is equitable, but also focused on the marginalized communities, the marginalized employees that we have that aren't as represented as you get higher up in our organization. Similarly with advancement opportunities, and then influence, making sure that we're really doing everything that we can as an organization to make sure marginalized employees are given a seat at the table, are included in the conversations, have the opportunity to be promoted across our organization. Next slide, please. Thank you. So what's the point of focusing on inclusive hiring? We honestly see inclusive hiring efforts as an opportunity to grow. You know, we see it, as you can see in the little graphic there, as a growth strategy, although this is not our graphic, but it's an opportunity to improve economic performance and support individual and our community's well-being. We really do that through investments that embed equity into the development process, hiring all the way through promotion and retention, really. We do this, of course, to better serve our patients. When we have a staff, an employee group who is representative of the patients that we serve, patients get better care. Similarly, to better serve our employees, when our employees see themselves in senior leadership individuals in our organization, they are encouraged and they know that they have the opportunity to grow with our organization. And it's also a great beacon to potential candidates who are interested in potentially joining our organization, that we do prioritize these pieces. We do take seriously our commitment to invest in our employees and in their growth. And then ultimately, you know, to combine both of those first 2 points, it's really to better serve our community as well, and making sure that we are doing everything we can to support economic growth and development across our South Side and West Side communities, but for all of the communities where we have UChicago Medicine locations. Next slide, please.
So we're going to start going into some of our initiatives, focusing on ways that we have promoted inclusive hiring with external talent pools. Now we're going to go through some of these initiatives, but UCM overall has taken a number of steps towards promoting inclusive hiring as a means of expanding our external as well as internal talent pools. So we're going to be discussing these activities as they fall into 3 groups: professional development, community partnerships, and then broader inclusive practices. So the first point I would like to bring up is professional development. While many employers, healthcare employers in particular, are operating somewhere along the spectrum of inclusive hiring, it's a new space for many. And frankly, you know, few of us can be really considered experts in this space. So it was for this reason that we really thought it was critical for UCM to find some external resources to help us learn about best practices and assist us with thinking about our work in this area from a really holistic lens, as opposed to one-off projects or initiatives that could aid in this effort. Cara Collective had been a long-standing partner with UCM as a workforce referral partner. And when we learned about their offerings through Para Plus, which is kind of their training institute aspect of their organization, we decided to receive additional training through them. Last year, Cara Plus offered a development opportunity called the Inclusive Sourcing and Hiring Institute. Audrey and myself, as well as some team members from talent acquisition, attended this training, which delivered workshops and also created space for planning and dedicated thinking around inclusive hiring practices. We really do think it's important to, whether or not you've been practicing inclusive hiring practices for a long time, or if you're just getting involved, to make sure that you're arming yourself with the most up-to-date best practices. And it also offers kind of a cohort or a realm of other similar-minded employees to think about their work. What have been some of your challenges? What have been some of the projects that have worked or haven't worked? And again, create that dedicated space for thinking specifically about how to advance these initiatives and how to make sure, once again, that you're really doing what works and lifting off these practices in a way that can be sustainable and aren't just, especially if you're getting used to this, it can be a challenge to lifting off some of these things, and having a group not only of dedicated experts like Kara, but also a cohort of colleagues to kind of learn from really does help to be able to bounce those ideas off of others in that space. In addition to professional development, we have listed off a few different types of programs to attract external talent. Many of these have been done throughout partnerships, and we'll get a little bit more in depth about what those partnerships have looked like in particular. But one that I would like to highlight here is the Inclusive Pathways Program. This was a grant initiative with funding from the Kessler Foundation in partnership with Annexter Center Chicago, with the goal of implementing a project that could really produce sustainable results of hiring more individuals who are disabled and being able to retain them and have them be successful within the organization. The grant term was between January 1st, 2019 and ended in March 31st of 2022. And UChicago Medicine was not the only employer partner in this partnership. So we also participated with Mount Sinai. And we had additionally some community partners serving as dedicated referral partners. And this included Southside Occupational Academy, as well as Safer Foundation. Ultimately, from kind of a metric standpoint, the goal was to hire 20 individuals from each system and make sure that we had a 90-day retention rate of 15 out of those 20 hires. And there was also a goal of making sure that 3 out of our 20 hires were placed in full-time positions. UCM was able to meet these grant objectives and has seen close to 90% retention rates across our inclusive pathways hires to date. In addition to the hiring-based grant objectives that I just discussed, a major component of this initial grant was to improve the culture at the participating employers' organization through internal audits and improving systems and processes that removed unnecessary barriers for disabled candidates. Another aspect of this grant was to prove the value of hiring an additional staff member dedicated to overseeing this work. And this individual we termed the Disability Inclusion Coordinator. While the grant period concluded last year, UCM has continued working with Annexter Center to hire and support candidates and employees with disabilities. And we've been able to preserve the Disability Inclusion Coordinator position through contracting. Since bringing our Disability Inclusion Coordinator on, we've been able to work together to develop processes that support candidates from referral to placement. And that includes things such as candidate recruitment, client intake at the Annexter Center, identification of open positions, matching candidates to positions based on experience and interest, advocating for applicants with recruiters and hiring managers, providing onboarding support, and providing ongoing check-ins throughout the new employees training and orientation. These check-ins occurred not only with the candidates and new hires, but also with the managers to make sure they felt supported in providing the types of resources necessary for these employees to succeed. So our Disability Inclusion Coordinator also meets weekly with recruiters to discuss hiring needs and the applicant slate. And she's also sat in on numerous phone screenings and interviews to help document processes that could be improved to be more accessible. So I think this role has been really mutually beneficial to both those running the program and our recruitment team and hiring managers by, again, helping to develop and create that talent pool, to support that talent pool to be successful, and to really think about what changes need to be made at an organization level in order for us to be truly successful and inclusive, making sure that individuals hired to this program felt like they had a home, as opposed to just, hiring for metric's sake, which is really critical for us. As you can see, the grant term has ended, but this is something that UCM has decided to continue on with. We're looking for additional opportunities to improve this work in the future, which include expanding recruitment resources to target a wider group of disabled individuals, looking at, expanding our referral partners so that we have a broader range of applicants who are interested in more roles throughout the organization. So this grant was pretty successful in hiring people into support services roles, but one of our challenges is thinking about how we place folks into degreed or other professional positions throughout the organization, and that's work that we're continuing to build on. I'm going to move on to talk about some of our other programs. So while Inclusive Pathways is kind of a dedicated partnership to hire folks and thinking about processes, we've also developed really targeted pathway programs as well. The NSA Pathway Program is an example of a program that provides fully funded educational opportunities to community members in order to remove those financial barriers, kind of informational access to get more CNAs in particular with this program at the organization. So UCM was challenged with NSA. We call CNAs NSAs here at UCM, but we were challenged with NSA recruitment and retention. It's a role that, it's relatively entry level, but there's a really high industry demand and a stagnant or even declining talent pool. And that's a challenge that we see across many positions in healthcare today. Applicants were not always familiar with the position and the associated requirements. So you had some folks applying without really knowing what the expectations would be. And so we had some drop off due to, culture mismatch, a position mismatch, as well as some drop off during onboarding due to, issues with those mismatches that occur. So we decided to create a program that would, one, remove that financial barrier to the education access to get certified to be a CNA. We also provided workforce support, including professional development and other supports to make sure that people would be retained throughout the program. We collaborated with community hiring partners to source and support students from our local targeted communities. We also provided a temporary employment opportunity for these individuals so that they could earn some money and also gain real exposure to what it's like to be an employee at UCM throughout the duration of their education. After they completed their education program, they were eligible for an interview and to be placed into a permanent position. We've had a couple of cohorts of this program thus far, and we're really proud to say that we have seen a lot of success. It took us a little bit to get there, making sure that we had manager buy-in, that we had the appropriate supports in place to make sure our candidates were successful. But our last cohort that we held, we actually had 100% graduation rate and 100% employment after the program. We also have been working with apprenticeship models. And so this is kind of a newer step for UCM. This isn't something that we had a whole lot of experience in, but seeing some of the successes that we've had from earn and learn opportunities like the NSA Pathway Program, we partnered with our pharmacy team to create an apprenticeship for pharmacy technicians. This program is pretty new. It just launched, and the strategy is a little bit unique in that instead of HR actually owning this, our pharmacy department has ownership over the program. Talent strategy supports the delivery and makes sure that the participants are supported from that HR aspect. But the program overall is designed to build a pipeline of licensed and certified pharmacy techs. The first cohort kicked off in January, and the participants are all locally sourced external hires that we made through our partnership with Skills for Chicagoland's Future. For future cohorts, we're hoping to be able to also involve incumbents, but right now we are kind of focused on those community hires. And these individuals are completing again, full-time employment at UCM for this temporary term. They also receive their actual curriculum and training to be prepared for their pharmacy tech certification through PTU. And this curriculum is provided to them at no cost. So they're being supported through their education as well as receiving that didactic on-the-job learning. At the completion of their program, which lasts 24 weeks, they will be able to sit for their pharmacy tech certification. And at that point, will be eligible to apply for full-time pharm tech roles at UCM. some more to come on that. We're kind of in the middle of our first cohort, but we're really excited to see how our first kind of toe dip into the apprenticeship world turns out. But we're really excited. We do think that for a lot of these positions, especially certified positions, that apprenticeships are really going to be a model really necessary to expand our talent pools, make sure that we are being inclusive as we go into the future. Continuing to talk about partnerships, it's kind of a major theme here with our ability to be successful in this inclusive space. We've also partnered with Advocate Aurora Health in Sinai, Chicago to lift off a program called Healthcare Forward. We've provided a link here, and we'll send out this PowerPoint deck, but we definitely invite you to click around and check out the website here. But Healthcare Forward is a collaboration, as I mentioned, between these hospital systems to focus on reaching individuals within our community who might not have ever considered healthcare as a career option. So Healthcare Forward really does prepare folks who are interested in entering healthcare from a non-clinical lens, provides education on what some of these jobs are, as well as training about how to be interview ready, how to kind of prep your resume, and how to actually search for and apply for these jobs. Healthcare Forward, we are coming up to a close on the grant, but we have seen really good initial success with getting individuals from our community into the different healthcare systems. And we're looking forward to seeing what this partnership and what these community outreach efforts could look like in the future beyond this grant. So most of these programs could not have been possible without partnerships. And I think that's really a key learning that we've had through lifting up many of these different programs and initiatives. Some of the names that we've mentioned prior from the community are Skills for Chicagoland's Future, which is a recruitment partner of ours who also teams up to provide workforce development and mentoring supports. Cara Collective, who I also mentioned, is a referral partner, but they also have that arm where they provide training and other resources. And then Annexer Center Chicago, again, they provide job coaching and other support for individuals with disabilities, as well as serving as kind of a subject matter expert in the area of disability. We also would not be successful without a cohort of like-minded colleagues or fellow healthcare employers. And so the CHWC has been really crucial with connecting us to some of who is available in this space, providing us with opportunities like this Lunch and Learn today to connect with other like-minded individuals and be able to share what has worked, what hasn't, and how we might be able to move forward together as opposed to competitively. Bridge Initiative Chicago and the MAP program are two grant-funded and programmatic opportunities that are kind of linked to that effort. So both of these initiatives wouldn't have been possible without CHWC, and they all involve collaboration between different healthcare partners towards the same goal, getting folks educated, getting folks trained so that they are ready to enter workforce. And I think that really does show that it's possible, not only possible, but really fruitful to have these collaborative relationships with other employers in the area. And then last but not least, our education providers. So, we couldn't get folks trained without having them educated and having the appropriate certifications. And so some of our programs have direct components that are pipelines with these different education institutions, whether it's Malcolm X, for example, we partnered with Rasmussen, Moraine Valley, TTI Medical, Midwestern Career College, and more. Some are, thinking creatively about how to create a better experience for clinical students who are performing externships or other clinical obligations. And, we're really working together with these education providers to be really strategic about how we can recruit actively, not only to our open positions, but also to the programs, because without working together to kind of market and attract folks to these different availabilities, we're going to continue to have trouble recruiting, even with strong relationships with education partners. The data really is trending that less and less people are going into healthcare as a career option. And so making sure that we have these relationships and that we're working together towards the same mission is really critical to making sure that we have long-term sustainable success. I'll pass it over to Audrey to talk a little bit more about recruitment.
Thanks, Ashley. Excuse me. So all of the great work that Ashley just gave an overview for, all of the partnerships that she and the team have developed need to then be supported by inclusive recruitment processes. And so to make sure that our recruitment processes are inclusive, We've implemented a number of initiatives to make sure that those are incorporated, equitable and inclusive practices are incorporated into our hiring process. So the main one of those, or I should say the most important one in our mind, are we have required unconscious bias training and behavioral interviewing training, and we also have created guides. Those two trainings are actually part of a series of 5 courses that are required for all hiring managers. So any individual who's hiring for a role is required to have taken unconscious bias training and behavioral interviewing training before they're allowed to recruit for the role. And we monitor that very closely. We send updates when people have gotten approval for roles but haven't completed the training. So we really make sure to hold our hiring managers to account on that point. We also encourage pretty aggressively that our hiring managers include behavioral interviewing techniques in their interviewing process and invite the entire interview panel or any individual that's involved in interviewing to also take that training, as well as the unconscious bias training. Our recruiting team has developed guides that provide tailored behavioral interview questions to assess the competencies that a hiring manager is assessing for the particular search, and then corollary evaluation guides as well. And just as a quick side note for anyone who's not familiar with behavioral interviewing as a concept, the purpose of behavioral interviewing is to focus on past experiences as indicative of future success. So it reduces as much as possible biases around, oh, well, they didn't answer this question well, if it's, more of a theoretical question. It's really focused on what have you done? What have you accomplished in your career? And so to start that process, a recruiter, when they meet with their hiring manager, agrees or identifies from the hiring manager what are the most important skills and competencies that they're looking for in this particular job. And then they develop behavioral interviewing guides with behavioral interviewing styled questions that the hiring manager and the interviewing team can then use to make sure that they're asking behavioral interview questions, first of all, but also focusing on the skills that hiring managers are prioritizing in that role. We've also developed a training for our recruiters, so that third bullet point there, to provide them with tools, high-level talking points, as well as organizational data points so that they feel confident to address unconscious bias when they encounter it in a hiring process. Again, unconscious bias is unconscious, but it does exist. And so we want our recruiters to be able to comfortably and confidently push back when they see that. We view our recruiters as the gatekeepers for our organization. And so we feel it's really critical that our recruiters are equipped to support the hiring managers as they consider and to consider a broad and diverse pool of candidates. Again, a lot of the programming that Ashley just provided an overview for is part of the work that we engage with to make sure that we are engaging a broad and diverse pool of candidates. And so we want to make sure that the hiring managers are open to considering candidates who they may not have considered otherwise. We also, to that point, spend time in a recruiter's onboarding, and the recruiting team has regular refreshers throughout the year to help the recruiters think creatively about how they can source diverse pools of candidates, where they can engage with those pools of candidates. And some of that work includes creating relationships with local and national entities that are dedicated to specific underrepresented groups or to supporting the advancement of underrepresented groups, either specifically or as a whole. So that's the next couple bullet points there. The second from the bottom, we also really emphasize delivering an equitable and inclusive process. So some of that comes from implementing behavioral interviewing techniques and assessing and establishing, first of all, what the characteristics are that the hiring manager is looking for, and making sure that people are assessing for those characteristics. But then also, equitable pieces like making sure the same interviewers are participating in all the interviews. I'm not just sort of brought in on a one-off basis, because that doesn't helpfully allow an individual to assess the entire candidate pool. We try and make sure that interviewers are asking a consistent set of questions so they're able to assess all of the candidates on the same criteria instead of one question for one candidate, a different question for another candidate, which doesn't provide an equitable ability to equitably assess candidates. And then also making sure that interviewers complete individual feedback forms, which reduces, that groupthink bias, but also make sure that the hiring manager has complete feedback to consider as they're making a hiring decision. Finally, with our executive searches, we're in the final stages of establishing preferred partnerships with firms who agree to our expectations on what we'd like to see for diversity of the slates of candidates. Fee structures and other components also go into that, but we really are working to ensure that our external partners are aligned to our goals and that they make that commitment and are willing to make that commitment to our values and the specific goals we have regarding inclusivity and diversity. We've seen good success in many of these initiatives. As any of you who are in recruiting may have guessed, some of our remaining hurdles and some of the good intentioned opposition that we continue to face are, pushback from our hiring managers who are short-staffed, who are under-resourced, and are trying to deliver world-class care to our patients. So to help them, feel comfortable and confident and like things aren't hindering their process, the recruiting team and we as recruiting partners really try and be as creative as possible with our solutions. We take responsibility to create those guides, provide those guides, hold managers to account on completing the training, some of the pieces I've mentioned already. One piece that we haven't quite figured out yet that we're still working on is, and I guess kind of a preview of what we're getting to next, is how to help our hiring managers consider alternative candidates for internal promotion. So people that maybe don't tick every single box, but they're internal candidates. They have demonstrated a desire to stay with the organization. Their their current manager has identified them as a high performer. So how do we make sure that those individuals are given equal consideration in a hiring process? Again, we have not figured out the solution to that, but we are working on that as kind of our current main hurdle. And then Ashley, if you want to go to the next slide. Thank you. So the last portion of our presentation today is, we've spent the first half talking about external partnerships and programs that we've created to engage talent. And now to turn to internal promotion and mobility. Some of our initiatives include incumbent development programs like Rise Higher and Evolve, which we'll talk to shortly. A focus on internal mobility, or I guess increasing that focus on internal mobility, encouraging hiring managers when they have a vacancy to look internal first. Some of our difficulties there, which will come up again a little bit later, are, how do hiring managers see across the organization instead of just in their vertical? But, that's what we view as sort of our next work to really continue this incorporation of inclusivity and equity across our hiring processes. As I mentioned before, we do have hiring manager training and expectations. We also hold our hiring managers, or we have the expectation that our hiring managers adhere to an internal posting period of 5 days for all roles, including promotions. And the thought behind that is not to exclude someone if they've been identified for a promotion, but more to allow other internal employees to put their hand up and say, I am interested in my next role or the next step. And to allow them to be considered for that role, to prompt conversations with their current managers about what they view as their next steps, what the gaps are to get them there, that sort of thing. And then we also, as much as we can, really rely on data of where our strengths are, where we're seeing successes, and also where the gaps are, where we have opportunity for improvement around promotion internally, whether that's in regards to diverse and underrepresented employees into higher positions, salary data, making sure that people from our service area, the South Side and West Side communities, are equally supported when it comes to salary and wages as the rest of our organization, the rest of our employees, and other pieces of data that we kind of continually keep an eye on to make sure we're on the right track. And then I will jump into the Rise Higher program. So as I mentioned in the slide before, one of our more recent programs to support internal promotion and mobility is what we call Rise Higher. And Ashley previewed this as well with her reference to the Bridge Initiative Chicago as one of our partnerships. Rise Higher came out of that partnership. It was one of the 3 programs developed in collaboration with 2 other health systems. And Rise Higher is an emerging leader program. It's aimed to prepare individual contributors to step into leadership roles. This program, in line with Bridge Initiative Chicago's grant objectives, was specifically designed as a support for our frontline employees of color, but it is open to all employees. Given the nature of this program and the intensity of this program, which we'll get into in a second, this program starts by a nomination. So any individual that wants to be considered for this program can't apply. They must be nominated by their leader. We also solicit nominations generally from organizational leaders of who are their rising stars. From there, nominees are invited to apply, and then up to 30 participants are selected to join the upcoming cohort. This program is a 12-week program. The participants meet virtually over 12 weeks for 3 hours each week. So again, a little bit intense, but it is effective. The content that we deliver in this program, it covers 3 distinct areas of leadership, which you'll see, and I will edit this so you can see the graphic a little bit better before we send it out, but there's 3 areas of leadership. So the first few weeks focus on leading self, which is really establishing who you are as a leader. Weeks 4 through 7 focus on leading others, so performance management, creating a positive work environment, improving performance, those sorts of things. And then the last weeks of the program focus on leading the business. Within the program, there are 3 key support systems. So the first one is supervisor touchpoints. Again, this program starts with a supervisor nomination. So we then expect the supervisor and the participant to have 3 regular touch points occurring at the beginning, middle, and end. So weeks 1, 6, and 12, where the participants discuss with their leader what they're learning, what their goals are for professional development, etc. The second support system is group mentoring. So we arrange for organizational leaders of color to come in and mentor our participants. So there's a senior leader of color that joins these participants in weeks 2, 6, and 11. So there's 3 instances of group mentoring. And they discuss, honestly, whatever they are open to discussing, but they're centered around sort of the content that was delivered that week. And some of that is, how do you establish yourself as a leader? What are your specific and unique considerations as a leader of color? So just very candid and open conversations. And then the third support system in this program is buddy trios. So participants are placed into buddy trios in week 1, and that group is meant to provide support throughout the entire program, as well as collaborating on their action learning project, which is the culmination of this program. So Rise Higher culminates in week 12 with participants in their buddy trios presenting their action learning project, which asks participants to identify a current real-world organizational challenge and then apply what they've learned in this program to develop a solution to that problem. And the team with the winning presentation, as voted on by their mentors, they'll have the opportunity to present their project charter to senior management as well, so that they have that opportunity to be recognized. So Rise Higher started actually a year ago, January 2022. We graduated our first cohort in April. And since then, we've run 3 total cohorts. And just in the span of, I mean, less than a year, we've had, I think, about 18 or 19 individuals receive promotions into new jobs. We've had an additional 18 or 19, and the numbers there are a little bit conflated because some of the individuals who got promoted also then decided that they want to pursue additional education. And some individuals have simply decided to pursue additional education to prepare them for that next step of leadership. But we've seen a lot of really positive success from this program, which we're very proud of and excited to continue, and hope to see the program continue to expand in the years ahead. And yeah, I'll pass it off to Ashley.
The other kind of partner program to Rise Higher is Evolve, which focuses on upskilling and advancing individuals from our front line. So unlike Rise Higher, employees actually self-nominate. So we advertise across the organization, obviously always looking for ways that we can get more in front of different groups. And again, being really inclusive and making sure that we're aware of meeting people where they're at. So in addition to email marketing, we plan to join huddles and actually go on site to make sure that people are aware of the program offerings that we have in the future. But employees, once they're aware of the program, they do apply. They answer a few questions about where they see themselves as far as their current skill set and their desires to grow. And after selection, we make sure that they have manager buy-in on the back end. So instead of waiting for manager submission or nomination, we do still make sure that managers are supportive because that's really crucial to folks' success. But we do that after the employees have actually applied themselves. The goal overall, once they're in the program, is to make sure that they have the ability to participate in additional training and professional development to help them bridge any gaps that may exist for them to pursue careers within the organization that have concrete advancement opportunities. And this includes clinical positions as well as non-clinical positions. Examples of some of the departments that we have partnered with include, revenue cycle. So looking for preparing folks for careers within call centers or other, finance related positions from a patient facing aspect. We've also partnered with our ambulatory customer service center. So preparing folks to be able to be that up front and center individual when greeting patients, but also being able to manage some of those administrative aspects of that job as well as introducing folks to kind of in-demand clinical careers, such as a variety of different technologist positions within radiology, for example. The ultimate goal is to make sure that we are providing our frontline employees with the opportunities to actually get promoted and to advance in these in-demand positions within our organization. Evolve, like Rise Higher, was initially created through Bridge Initiative Chicago and has completed 3 cohorts as well during this grant period. We're currently wrapping up as of next month, and so we're still kind of tracking and seeing where folks have landed after completing the program. But we hope to be able to announce those promotion rates within the next few months. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out or stay tuned on that. The program itself is a little bit shorter than Rise Higher, so it's 10 weeks in totality, and is primarily made of workshops targeted at different skills. So we have a group of training, including critical thinking, providing elite customer service, as well as thriving in a diverse environment that we have workshops for our participants on. We also have more targeted hard skill training in medical terminology, as well as digital skills, which include introduction to how to use Microsoft Office suites, how to perform well in a virtual presentation environment, email etiquette, those sorts of things. And the program culminates in a job shadow opportunity for the individual's department of choice. So there's also a coaching component. Evolve was kind of primarily created not only to provide this upskilling, but to provide an opportunity for employees to get exposed to different positions and to explore interest in those areas. So we actually start off before kicking off any programming with a few assessments. There's 2 assessments through WorkKeys, which assess people's general skills levels and as applies to kind of work-related areas. So their ability to read and synthesize information from charts, as well as process documents, as well as basic workplace math. We also provide kind of more of a aptitude or interest assessment about current skills and areas of interest as relates to career groups. So we take these assessments that they take at the beginning of the program, they go through their skills training, and once they've completed that skills training, we provide reports about how to read the assessments and have group coaching so that folks know how to read the reports and how to analyze and extract that information to help them make an informed decision about which career they would like to explore further. After receiving that group coaching, they then select a job shadow, and they're also provided with kind of a post-graduation guide about how to be interview ready. And this includes tips and tricks about how to ace a STAR-style behavioral interview, how to update and review your resume, how to provide a really great first impression through a LinkedIn profile, as well as other types of supports as well. Evolve has been a target cohort size of about 15 to 25 employees and includes employees across our health system. So UCM's Hyde Park main campus, as well as Ingalls and Care Network. During this grant period, we've also uncovered a few challenges, which we'll speak to in a little bit. But some of these challenges have been making sure that we have focused and dedicated career pathways and opportunities. Once our job shadow host departments participated and agreed to sign on to the program, we really gave them full run of being able to shape what that experience would look like for these employees. We saw a lot of interest in being able to provide additional training opportunities and exposure to different different careers in the department. And that includes more than just entry-level positions, but really providing employees with the insight as to how they can grow within those specific departments. And so, now that the grant period has ended, we're taking some time to redevelop the program, make sure it's really targeted to the needs of the department and organization, and also aligned with the interests of our employees. So more to come on that, but Evolve is continuously evolving to make sure that it continues to be inclusive and also provide real results in placing folks in their desired career path.
So outside of our frontline development opportunities, which Ashley and I just talked about, we have a few other existing programs that focus on leadership development as well. And in addition to the programs that Ashley and I just mentioned, Rise Hire and Evolve, these leadership programs really benefit from the partnership of our talent development team. So we partner very closely with them for Rise Hire and Evolve, and then they actually are the ones that take the lead on the majority of the programs listed here. The Ambulatory Leadership Development Series is a curated and specific set of courses that emerging leaders in ambulatory are invited to take. The courses are co-facilitated by experienced ambulatory leaders, and those leaders also serve as role models and educators for other new leaders. In addition to those courses, in the Ambulatory Leadership Development Series, there's opportunity to participate in a book club as well as mentorship opportunities. Requisite Leader Development is a series of courses, again, provided and curated by our talent development department that focuses on building leadership strength, leadership trust, and also encourages a culture of learning. Compliance with this program is not mandatory, but it is encouraged. And we're exploring and working on potentially incorporating this program, progress within this program. So participating in some of these courses as a step to be eligible for, or as a positive in your case, if you want to apply for a promotion. And then lastly, we have a number of mentorship programs throughout the medical center, not necessarily owned by one entity, but some of them include Women in Supply Chain mentorship program. There's a mentorship program for Black women in leadership. These programs have seen good success and result in really strong employee engagement and retention by the participants, or I should say from the participants, as a result of their participation in these programs. Next slide, please.
Oh, yep. In the interest of time, and because we talked to it a little bit, we're going to skip over what some of our challenges and opportunities are to make sure that we have enough time for anyone who has questions. So the floor is yours. Feel free to ask via chat or to come off mute.
Thank you so much, Ashley and Audrey. And actually, why don't you just go back to that last slide just so we can, visually see it. I think that's interesting. yeah, I do want to make sure we have time for questions. This has been really insightful. There's so much going on at UChicago Medicine that I didn't know about. I've learned so much. I'll kick off with one question, then I encourage everyone else, we have a small enough group here. We only have 7 minutes left, maybe come off camera, have a little discussion. But Audrey, you mentioned data at one point. I wonder if all of these different programs and strategies are, coming down from any sort of like articulated top level strategy where you are tracking particular data points and seeing any movement, around diversity at certain levels of salary or, retention, movement, anything like that. I guess my question is, are there, clearly articulated strategies at the top level with data points, and are you tracking those?
Yeah, thanks, April. And Ashley, please feel free to jump in here too. We do have what is called our Equity 2025 plan, which really focuses on demographics around race and gender. So in those categories, we do have stated goals and data that we're tracking very aggressively. Our team, while recognizing how important those are, and obviously having created programs to continue to support that work and increase the numbers of underrepresented individuals in our leadership, we also are trying to expand beyond just race and gender and increase diversity and be inclusive, again, outside of just those categories, which includes diversity, justice-involved individuals, veterans, LGBTQ, there's much more diversity than just race and gender. And so while yes, we are absolutely tracking and supporting our organizational stated goals on increasing race and ethnicity representation, racial and ethnic representation in our leadership, as well as gender representation in our leadership, we are challenging ourselves outside of just those two categories. And Ashley, if you have anything to add, please also jump in.
No, for sure. And I think that is, kind of a guiding star and also a challenge, right? So making sure that we have the right data to inform our decisions, and that data is continuously complex, right? You think you might have the right data points and you're tracking the right thing, but it can sometimes lead to more questions. And so there are some areas where I feel like we're really strong in setting really key guiding metrics and really working towards those. There's definitely other areas where we're still kind of figuring out what the right data is, what the right questions, and how we should be guiding our programs. And I would say from that end, we are data informed, not necessarily data driven. I think whether it's through anecdotal conversations or focus groups or case studies that we're seeing, we still are receiving information on best practices and the ways to go. Whether or not we have data to support that at an organizational level, it might vary by initiative, but we're really passionate about moving forward with, and at least testing to see what things are working and not working, and not letting maybe a lack of data kind of hold us back in that area. But we do think it is crucial to be able to eventually make sure that we're really setting up these measurable goals and working towards that.
I would add, just as a clarifier, Ashley is absolutely, well, my go-to anyways for data. So she's the data expert on our team. Although yes, to her point, it's an evolving process.
Does anyone else have a question? And I'm gonna drop a link in the chat with a quick survey as well, but please, Grant.
Yeah, sure. Just a comment, honestly. Really great presentation and really valuable information. Specifically about programs, do you have any like internship programs that you work with, like maybe high school students or college students that maybe are interested in healthcare but might not have a good idea of what that looks like?
So we have a number of programs. One, we have a long-standing relationship with Cristo Rey, which is a high school that primarily serves Latinx students. And HR has recently joined this project, and we have interns kind of working within our HR team, as well as across supply chain, some lab areas, and a variety of different avenues across the hospital. And so that's a great way for high school students to kind of get exposed to the organization and different career opportunities. We also have a program that we partner with our biological sciences division, so the school there, called Achieve, and they work with both high school and undergrads at UChicago to work on different community projects associated with social determinants of health. And so it's kind of it's a broader kind of exposure type program that lets students know, again, about social determinants of health, about different community partners and their role in making sure that healthcare access is equitable. It also exposes students to some careers and opportunities through things like career panels and job shadowing as well. And that culminates in kind of a capstone project where students are partnered with community organizations who are really interested in solving a key issue related to a social determinant of health. And so that's an awesome opportunity as well. We have a couple of different opportunities that are primarily department led. So for example, our radiology department has recently kicked off an internship that recruits from recently graduated high school seniors in order to give them, some employment opportunity over the summer, expose them to what it's like to work in a radiology department, and kind of help them take those first steps towards getting education and certification. So we do have a number of programs there. That's definitely an area that we could, grow in though.
Thank you.
No problem, Grant.
Adam, did you have a final question?
I got to bounce to the next meeting. I'm out of time, but great. This is all great. You guys are doing great stuff. I was curious, you're internalizing so much at UCM of like what workforce programs do. You're doing it yourselves. I was wondering if that's coming out of a subpar performance of the existing workforce programs that you experienced, or if not, what was the what was the like leadership buy-in to develop all of this internally? What did that process look like, or where did that start? Did that start from the top down, or did you have to, how did this get sold?
That's a great question. I might even ask, I know Betsy, our supervisor, who has been doing this work long before Audrey and I came on, she might have more information there. But I think, if I'm going to speak to this quickly, I think that there has been a challenge throughout healthcare for quite a long time, and making sure that, we're finding adequate talent, especially for some of these harder to fill roles. And that's existed even prior to COVID. That has really complicated this whole labor situation. Chicagoland is a highly competitive healthcare environment, and we're really competing for talent quite frequently for a number of positions. And so even with really strong partnerships with schools or working with workforce agencies who, this is their bread and butter and the work that they do, we were still challenged to have talent pools to really fill some of the positions that we're working with. And so there has been a need to be creative in terms of what types of programming we have and different ways to grow our talent pools. And I think that's really where most of this has come from. It's not necessarily that we're seeing like a lack of skills, but just a lack of people entirely. And so buy-in from our leadership came from seeing that day to day, from being, working with leaders, line leaders, department heads who are struggling with understaffing and, really eager to participate in things like hosting students for clinical, but might not have the head count. And so they've kind of spearheaded this work. Obviously, the fact that our team grew from just Betsy, our supervisor, to a team of 3 has really showed that buy-in and support and the need to dedicate some resources. Definitely still something that we're working on, but proof of concept and running all these different pilots has really been also crucial to getting leadership success, just getting our toe in with minimal investment and showing that these things work.
Beyond, sorry, I'm gonna run, but beyond the like standard workforce services that are out there, especially stuff like disability, I forget what you called it, but you have hired an internal like disability inclusion kind of role. That's such a huge resource, which like some disability programs, have that. It's so complicated for people to sort out their SSDI and how many hours they can work and still maximize benefits and all that stuff. And so super interesting. Ashley, like, let's touch base. And I messaged you, and there's still so many resources that are underutilized, and it could be complementary and like co-enrolled. Yeah, we'll talk more.
Absolutely. Thanks, Adam.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much, Audrey and Ashley. I know we all need to run to our next meetings. Really appreciate the time and dedication you put into this and admire all the work that you're doing at UChicago. I hope you'll send me the slides so I can send them out to everyone who registered. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
You know.
Bye.
Bye.